to Serendipity Intended. It's time for another day of Junk Journal July 2025 as I clear off my stuff. Specifically, it is day 9. Forest is the prompt. And once again, I was inspired by something that I found on the page of this spread. And specifically, it's this idea of a sound collage. So the original author created a sound collage of sounds that she heard. And so I thought I would do the same thing on the other side. So I found this color paint and I thought that would make a pretty similar color background to the original page. And so I started to paint and then realized that I hadn't intended on painting over the title. So that's when you make lemons out of lemonade or lemonade out of lemons. And I just thought, well, I'll go with the color. So I started to paint here, and one of the things that I noticed right away is that this paint didn't completely cover the text on the page. This particular brand doesn't have a ton of pigment in it, which is great if you want to layer things, not so great if you want to cover things up. I was also trying to get as much as I could into the part of the page that was where the rings were, so that the white wouldn't be very noticeable. But as I got more color on the paper, I really decided that this was not the same color gray, and I needed something else. So I thought I would add a little bit of this prairie green from Folk Art brand. This tends to be a little bit more pigmented. And so one does a little bit better job of covering, but also I was hoping would add a little bit of coolness and also a greenish tinge to the gray paint that I was using to make it a little bit more similar to what was on the other side. And what I ended up with was pretty close, not an exact match, but I felt like it was definitely closer than the original paint that I started with. So once I got it mixed, I decided that it was, in fact, much closer, a little darker, but more in the same color family. And so I decided just to go for it. So once again, trying to get into the little bits and pieces without being too terribly fussy about it, but trying to minimize that white. And then I did decide at one point to pause the camera, so that you didn't have to watch me paint this entire page. So I don't think I mentioned the wax paper that is behind is so that I don't get a ton of paint on the pages underneath. You can see a little bit of the text, and I'm really pretty much okay with that. Then I decided it was a little too green. So then I went back over again with the gray, but it sort of blended in with the green and was much more satisfied with that color. The other plus was that the majority of the background did end up getting covered over by the time I finished with all of the layers of paint. to wait too long between doing this and working on the other side, so I went ahead and used my heat gun to dry things off. It's acrylic paint, so it dries fairly quickly, but since I had a couple layers on here, I wanted to give it an extra little shot with the heat gun. Then after I did that, I decided that I wanted to take a little bit of the color from the first page and bring it onto the other page just to try and connect them a little bit, one to the other. Then I took this acrylic marker, and I had tested this color before and decided it was pretty close to the color of the trees. So I wanted to use it to make the title stand out, since that really is the words or the title for this particular page. So it's the sound collage of the forest or forest animals was what I was thinking. And then so I have my little blurb there of forest, which I will add later. But then I had these animals, so I decided to play a little bit with where I was going to place them. I thought the owl worked better because he was facing in. I don't want to put this bird down just yet because of that wet paint, but I am going to overlap that title a little bit. And not that I think normally a bear and a squirrel would sit together, but I thought they were kind of cute. And then even though I wanted to include that fox, there just didn't seem to be any place to put it. So then I decided I would trim off the white because they just didn't seem to connect to the page with all of that white around. So I decided to fussy cut each of them. This was actually a little bit challenging on those tiny spots because the stickers are fairly thick and they're also backed, so it was really like cutting off a fairly heavy cardstock, which made fussy cutting the pointier and narrower places a little bit more difficult. I decided once I finished with this one that I would fussy cut the others off camera. And you can see there, they're all fussy cut. And they turned out pretty well, although in looking at them, I realized I probably should have left a little bit of the white because and they just didn't really stand out the way that I wanted them to. So then I decided, okay, I need something in the background. So I drew a really light line where I wanted the grass to go so that I could sort of have that in place. And then I sketched a tree, and I wanted to have a branch for the tree. And I also wanted to make sure that I hit that bear and squirrel in the right place. So again, trying to simulate the tree that was over on the other page, just a little bit larger, trying to give a little bit of illusion of depth, like maybe this side was closer and the other side was slightly further away. So there's my branch. And it's probably really hard for you to see this. I was intentionally drawing fairly light because I didn't want to have the pencil show through. And then I came back to that green pen. And now, again, you can barely see it on the video, but the tree trunks, they didn't color it in completely. They let some of the background show through. And so that gives the illusion of textured bark. So I was trying to recreate that here with my tree. So you'll see as I color things in that I'm intentionally not filling in all of the color, trying to make the style of that art similar to the style of the art that is on the original page. Doing the edge is always so much harder. I was checking here to see how much I was getting on the other side because I really like the brown on the facing page and I didn't want to mess things up too badly. So you may notice me stopping and pressing the pen. That is so that I can get a little bit more paint down into the nib. Like there. There, so a little bit of that texture of tree bark. And then decided I wanted a little twig there, just so there wasn't just a branch. And then to do the rest of the drawing, or at least the grass, I knew there was no way that I was going to be able to use the pen to make that fine of a line. So instead I got some of the ink out onto my little lid palette there. And then I got a really thin, fine paintbrush and I used that paintbrush in the marker paint to create the thinner line using that same color. And continued that color a little bit onto the other page just to try and connect the two together a little bit. And then on the original page, there are little drawings of objects that you would see. And I elected to mostly use the stickers as the objects, but I also decided to use that marker pen paint pen paint to draw some additional things onto my side just so that there was something else there. But first I wanted to make sure that that was dry so that when I glued the animals down and I went to paint that I didn't end up smearing that paint someplace that I didn't want it to be. So again, just positioning them. All right, and then coming back in. So in the woods near my house, there are leaves everywhere on the ground. And so I decided that that would be something that I could draw in and then include the sounds. And then I was trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to draw. And then I decided, no. Since I didn't want to letter in that paint because the marker was too thick, and I didn't want to try and do a whole lot of writing with the fine paintbrush, I decided that I would go over the letters of the title with a black marker, and then also over selected pieces of text on the facings page, just right over top of what the author had with the black pen, so that they would match the writing that I was doing on my own side. A little bit of trouble getting the back off here. And then I remembered that this particular sticker has a slit in the middle, and you just peel from the center and it comes off. So since the squirrel was behind the bear, I needed to glue it down first, but I left the bear in place so that I could make sure to get it right where I wanted it to be. Then the bear can cozy himself right back in again. Go. In retrospect, I would have put him a little bit higher if I had it to do again. And then the bird, I could not for the life of me remember how I had that thing in there. And I wanted to keep as much of the tail as I could, but also not interfere with the wire of the coils that bind the pages together. And I didn't want to cover up the title too much. So I had to fuss with that a little bit. And then once I did finally get it into place, I ended up cutting off part of the tail because it just really didn't work. And then very awkwardly trying to cut this off, and I finally managed to get it removed and the remaining piece of the tail stuck down. It's a little bit like doing surgery. So I was really wishing that I had left that little bit of white border on, and I hadn't. So what I ended up doing was going back and going around each of the creatures with a white gel pen, just to add a little bit of that white in to allow them to pop. And then on most of the animals, I also added a little bit of the paint onto the sticker itself. Connect the paint and the stickers together with the page. How are you doing with your junk journaling challenge? I hope that you are having fun, even if you're not on the official day, or maybe have skipped a day or two or are behind. Or perhaps you are just enjoying watching what other people create. However, it is that you decide to enjoy and participate in the Junk Journal July Challenge, I think that's great. So now, with all of that done, I decided to go back and to start writing in words to document the sounds that I was adding into the forest. And using the same arrows that the original artist did, and just kind of going through and jotting. Even if you don't live near a forest or some woods, you could do this same sound collage with any location, whether that is a busy urban street or inside of a coffee shop or even in a library or a museum. Take a sketch of the things that you see and the sounds that you associate with them, and use them to create your very own sound collage. What other locations can you think of that would be fun to do a sound collage for? Put your ideas in the comments below. So I had a little trouble deciding where I wanted to write about the owl. I hit upon that spot right there. You'll see I went back over, here's where I traced over the words. I tried to just pick the items that were related to being in the forest, since that was what my sound collage was for. So I didn't collage or write over, for example, where it said car horns honking, because that didn't make sense for a forest. But there were other items that seemed like they could make sense for someone sitting in the forest to hear. And I also included that little book there because I thought, well, if you took your journal into the forest with you to do your journaling, then you could also hear the sounds of the pages rustling in the journal as you turned them. And then randomly, I think just because I wanted to fill in that space, there was a little speech bubble of someone saying hello. And I thought briefly about not highlighting it just because I thought it was weird to hear someone saying hello in a forest or the woods, but I really wanted to draw that there, so I left it just because I thought it was cute. Okay, then I decided, okay, well, I need to add my label for forest, and I thought about a couple locations and then settled upon the top corner there. I did decide to trim off the ends a little bit so there wasn't quite so much extra black showing, and then heared that down. Decided there still wasn't enough white, so I went back over all of the arrows that I had drawn and retraced them in white. In retrospect, I probably should have done them in white and then gone back over them with black so that there would be white and black. And I may go back to this page if I have a few spare moments and do that, add some black over top of those arrows just to make them stick out a little bit more. But I do like the white. That was pretty much it. A few extra little white dots just to continue that white theme a little bit. And that was that. I hope you had fun today. I did.